Hi everyone that's joined us, and thank you very much for coming along to another Trading Standards Farming Partnership Mental Health and Wellbeing in Farming webinar. I think this is our fourth one now, and it's really nice to have them continued, and we really appreciate all your support in following us and spending a couple of hours with us. We've got some really interesting talks on tonight from Farm Safety Foundation and the police. But just before we have our first speaker on, I was just going to hand over to Nikki and Sam. So as you can see, they just like to do a little bit of a slide from our recent outing at the Devon County Show. So I'll hand over to them.
Thanks, Becky. Yeah, I just wanted to take the opportunity. I don't know if everybody that's joined us this evening will be aware, but we managed to attend the Devon County Show this year. We took a stand as part of our Devon County Council stand for mental health and wellbeing in farming, and we linked it with a sort of Trading Standards Farming Partnership, and it was massively successful. We had, we were promoted as one of the 12 best stands to view by Devon Live, so come and visit on the day. And I just wanted to take the opportunity really to thank all our Trading Standards Farming Partnership members that sort of helped us along the way really. And Sam's just showing you some of the people that have been involved and kind of helped us along, from giving leaflets, from coming to do talks on the day, from providing us with posters, and also Calm did a lovely presentation which we rolled out throughout the show in the background on the TV. So yeah, so it was just really our sort of first face-to-face event really since COVID hit us all, and so it was just really an opportunity to say thank you, and also if anyone is in the future wanting to take part in these things, it would be really great to have everyone on board.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Kerry PC Whitting. I work with Martin Beck, and we are a pair of rural affairs officers who cover Devon. We've got a couple of colleagues that also cover Cornwall. Between the two of us, we're responsible for the area of Devon, and a bit later on we'll be showing you, telling you about our role.
Hi everybody, it's Martin here. Great to see you this evening. We'll just run through some of the things that we do on the Devon side of the border, just so you know who we are. And Pete's in the audience. Pete, are you there? Say hello.
Sorry, hit the button. Yeah, Pete Wills, Avon and Somerset Police, the Rural Affairs Unit.
So we're just going to run through some of the things we do. Typically, it relates to the same sort of activities to support rural policing, certainly the rural crime element to it. By no means, none of us are task force. We don't run around in the police cars kicking indoors. What we are here is to support and coordinate some of the efforts of our forces do to tackle rural crime. Some of the things which we look at involve the national strategy. Can I have the next slide, please? There we go. So wherever you are in the country, most police forces adopted the national plan. It's a national strategy. So these are some of the core things that the rural policing teams will look at. And in that heading, we have farm plant machinery theft, the stuff that really gets to us, the acquisitive crime that goes on. Livestock offences, core stuff around livestock theft and livestock worrying, and we're going to talk about livestock worrying a bit later. Fuel and battery theft, really big, typically fuel, but we've included battery over the Devon side simply because it's the fuel of the future, and lots of it goes on, as you know. Equine crime, real key one for us as well. We've got a great equine community which we support, and they support us. Fly tipping, typically we join in with the local authorities and district in supporting their strategies against tackling fly tipping. We've got a role to play. The last one there is poaching. The wildlife stuff, which Pete, Kerry and I are also wildlife crime officers, are there. I won't read them out, as you can see what they are. CITES, if you're wondering, is the control of the trade of endangered species. It's a really interesting one for us. And yes, we do get that happening in the West Country, certainly as a conduit from the rest of the world to us and then out again. And then an emerging issue we're looking at is our heritage crime. So that's our ancient monuments, etc. And there's plenty of those around, and the importance of that. And one of the things I'm quite keen to try and steer the force towards is sustainability. And we've got to look at the things which we're trying to protect for future generations. And amongst all those things with wildlife and heritage crime, the things we want to protect for future generations. Kerry, is there anything else you want to say about the National Plan, or Pete?
No, that's just about it. Thank you.
Avon and Somerset follow the same sort of policy. We all sort of got a regional, from Gloucester, Wiltshire, Avon and Somerset, Dorset, and Devon and Cornwall. We all sort of follow the same sort of plans, really.
So whilst there is some sort of regional variance, we will have these core things at our hearts. Certainly for the rural affairs, things you see on the left, those are things we are trying to tackle. And of course, there's things outside there we do get involved in, but typically those are the things which we're focusing on. That isn't all rural policing, that is the rural crime we're trying to focus on. Next slide, please. So the role of Kerry and I, this isn't Pete, and they do again slightly variations across the region, is we're here to deliver that national strategy, the things I just mentioned, into Devon Cornwall Police. So one of the things, 5 things we're trying to do, I'll just read it to you, is build the best practices. So we look at Pete and see the good work he's doing. We're seeing, well, that must work in Devon then, and we're trying to apply it. Vice versa, we share good practices with Pete, and we try and do our best for you and try to get rid of that border so you get a good level of service across wherever you go. And toolkits means how we provide information within the force. So unfortunately, in our training school, a lot of the things we look at with wildlife crime isn't taught at the grassroots level. So we'll go in and we'll assist officers understand things like back persecution or rapid persecution. And we've created internally some toolkits for them to do that. So that's what toolkits means. And training as it is, it's awareness training. Improve the way we collate intel, and raise emerging issues. And we all do that. Pete does it as well. So we look at the ongoing trends. So it's really important when you report crime to us, we use that data. So quite often people say, there's no point reporting it, police can't do anything. Well, we need that information. As far as our bosses are concerned, if it's not reported, they think it doesn't happen. So the information we use is we look at the methods that are being used, where it's happening, who's it connected to. So there's a bigger picture to understand. And that also links to what resources we can put towards it. So the thing about, for you guys out there, is to make sure you report crime to us. Anything else to say, Pete, about intelligence and information?
No, I'd say there's a lack of it. The people in the community assume that we know a lot more, and other organisations, they assume that we know the information. And when I go to source, so even the Somerset works like crime map. So every crime reported gets a little pinpoint. And when there's enough, that creates enough interest from the bosses to push staffing towards that area to sort out the hot spot. So if people don't report crimes, we won't get a hot spot and it won't get looked at. And equally, if we don't get the intelligence in through the system, again, it's very difficult to push a lot of staff towards the problem. So I would encourage anybody in the rural communities to report intel or crimes.
Yeah, and there's numbers of ways you can do that. I haven't put a slide on, but obviously if you can get through 101, phone them up. If you can't, use our online services. So they're on the web pages, there's a way of reporting. It goes to the same call handler. There's also web chat now. If those are young enough to use web chat, you can type in, it goes to the call handlers. And lastly, there's things like Crime Stoppers, which is massively undersold. We should be using it more often. So if you're not confident about giving the police information, give it to Crime Stoppers and it will come to us in a sanitized way. We can't see where it's come from as well. So there's lots of ways of getting information to us. Coordinating the force's response to rural crime with our strategic partners. I mean, there's many of them, and I think the next slide, don't go to it yet, shows some of those partners. But it's really important we don't work alone. We are part of the community. We want to work with people. We want to understand what their needs are as well. I think we've got some NFU people in the audience, so they know that we work with them as well to listen, understand what's going on, and then members can report back to them. We'll feed it back into the police force. Improving the working relationships with partner agencies and businesses. I'm hoping we're doing that well. Something Pete and I do very often, certainly for the wildlife work we do. And it's not just in the West Country. Our relationships go across the UK now into Europe as well. So our expertise is growing the more people we know and understand how they work. And the last one for me is really important. It's about policing culture. So we want to raise the issues of rural crime, rural affairs. We want to push that into modern policing. Now, we all know, and my strap line at the moment to everybody is Devon, and Somerset and Cornwall are rural counties, and everything else should come from that. So our policing style, I think, personally, should reflect the rural nature of where we are. So how do we change? How do we put a focus into rural policing, in policing culture? Kerry, you're very quiet. Anything to add to that?
No, I'm just listening to some Eating Crisps. No, nothing to add to that. That's just about covered. Yeah, it's all about our connectivity and how we reach out to other agencies, and we use them and they use us and basically support each other. So no, you've covered that all. Thank you.
Next slide, please. It's the last one. So this is very brief. This is really just giving you a real snapshot or sort of taster of what we do. There's a lot more things we do in our role, but this is just a bit of taster. Partners, there's just a few on there. There's a few. I know it's Devon, Cornwall based, but obviously Somerset has equally just as many numbers of partners we're working with, and that's growing. Some of them are government agencies, some of them are non-government agencies, but we're here to listen, to work with them, to understand them, and to build forums. So I know the Somerset Policing Crime Forum works quite well. We have similar ones in Devon and in Cornwall, certainly on our moor areas and on uplands. And it's really key we do work together. That's kind of all I wanted to say from me. Pete and Kerry?
No, I think it covers the basic introduction.
Yeah, from us, the partners you see on the screen now, we have about 45 different partners come to either, well, with COVID, it's on Teams, but before that, they all come around a table, so you get to meet everybody. Pass off intel, and I think there are 45 different partnerships that come to our rural forum at the moment, and we hope to expand that, and it really works well. But you don't achieve anything on your own. If you'll achieve far more as a team, and like Martin's got on that screen, that the team's getting bigger and wider. It's much better.
Brilliant. Thank you. I'll hand it back to the studio, as it were.
Great. Well, thanks very much, Martin, Kerry, Pete. My apologies. I did mean to introduce you, then I realised I was speaking with a mute microphone, so I'm sorry about that. Beginners' problems here. So, but yeah, we'll obviously have a bit more of an update from you guys on certain subject areas a bit later on. But we're really lucky as well tonight to have Stephanie Berkeley from Farm Safety Foundation. A lot of people might know them also as Yellow Wellies. Steph's got a really busy week because it is Farm Safety Week this week, so I know she's doing lots of interviews and radio interviews, etc. So she's kindly agreed to speak to us for a little while just about Farm Safety Week and a few other bits. So I will hand over to Steph.
Thank you very much, and thanks for having me. I feel like I'm at everything but the crib at the moment. So yeah, as Rebecca did say, I manage the Farm Safety Foundation, which is a small charity, and I unfortunately don't have a really nice tag team approach like my predecessors, so I'm a bit annoyed about that, and that's because there's only 3 of us in the charity. So yeah, sorry about that. But you've got me, and that'll do, I'm sure. So you may be aware of some of our campaigns, Mind Your Head and this week's Farm Safety Week. And we are so happy to work with lots and lots of collaborators because we're small and we can't do it alone. Next slide, please. I feel like Chris Whitty even saying this. Can I have the next slide, please? So we were set up in 2014 by NFU Mutual, the insurance company. Their board had created an idea to do a focus week in a year called Farm Safety Week. And they ran it for a couple of years. It was very successful for them. But the board then challenged themselves and said, well, look, we need to do this every day of the year. 1 week in a year is not enough for us to look after, our members. So let's set something up completely separately. So they set us up as an independent registered charity. So we report to an independent board of trustees and to one member of NFU Mutual. And we were set up to preserve and protect the physical and mental well-being of the next generation of farmers. We've got lots of very, very good friends in the area. We work very collaboratively with a lot of people across the area. So we open our campaigns like Farm Safety Week and Mind Your Head out to the entire farming community because we want to engage farmers and farming families of all ages because they all share the same issues and they all basically would reflect on the poor safety record and the poor mental well-being that's happening actually in the industry at the moment. Next slide. And yes, Andrew Butler, the very man who said, and we're actually very supportive of this fantastic little initiative that's running at the moment, that NFU Southwest, our friends at the National Farmers Union in Southwest, they've created something and it just goes well. So if anybody wants to read anything about it, it's either on NFU online or we have it on our website, or check out our social media. So how we do what we do is we have an education programme. We have delivered farm safety training to 15,000 agricultural students right across the UK at 41 different colleges. We also have created the Farm Safe Curve, which is a module that the National Federation of Young Farmers Clubs sends out and actually delivers peer-to-peer with the young farmers there. Devon Young Farmers Club, we have a fantastic relationship with them anyway, with Dan Grist and people like that. Work very closely with them. We're guests on their stand for Devon County Show. Also, we have an education programme where we deliver training to businesses, and that would be businesses that actually want to learn about understanding a little bit more about mental health in farming, how it's impacting the industry and what they can do to support it. In terms of engagement, basically it's making friends. We work very closely with lots of different types of organisations. We work closely with HSE and the HSE Northern Ireland. We work closely with all the farming unions. I attend all the farm safety partnerships across the UK. And we work very closely with government in terms of all-party parliamentary groups. And I sat with Anne-Marie Morris on the APPG on rural health and social care, and that was really interesting. Communication is using campaigns, social media, PR to actually get people to know what we do and to actually amplify the messages and keep those farm safety and mental wellbeing messages to the forefront of people's minds, and using different ways of that, and I'll get into that in a minute. And then research. We do research into our target audience. We research into issues such as tiredness, the wearing of helmets on ATVs. We do a lot of different types of research so that we can actually use that to inform how we're doing. We evaluate all of our activities, so it helps to guide how we can do it better, how we can work smarter, given very limited resources that we have and the limited people, how we can get the message out to as many people as possible. So next slide. Why we're doing what we're doing. UK, only not even 500,000 people work in the industry. It's 1.5% of the working population, but it's nearly a quarter of all deaths in the workplace. That has gone up. These figures, if any of you have missed any of the news this week, the figures for workplace fatal injuries in farming have almost doubled over the last year. There were 21 deaths in farming last year. There were 41 this year. 7 of them were members of the public, which included 2 children. And 5 of those members of the public were in contact with livestock. So if you go on to the next slide. The reasons for people losing their lives on our farms have not changed over the last 60 years. It is still the same 5 or 6 different things. Moving vehicles, injured by animals, contact with machinery, struck by moving objects. The only thing that has changed in the last 60 years is the introduction of the quad bike, the ATV. It's the only thing that's different. And actually this year, 6 people died as a result of quad bike injuries. And what HSE will probably tell you is that the majority, if not all of those, were people that were not wearing their helmet at the time of using the bike. So it's something as simple as that, which can be a simple change that somebody can make. So people saying that farm safety costs the earth, no, it doesn't, but it can cost you your life if you don't do it. These simple things like keeping a tidy farm, doing an emergency plan, planning your jobs beforehand, the reasons and the causes, putting on your seatbelt, these things can be clearly and very quickly and very simply addressed. But the thing is, there's a lot of complacency in the industry. People think that they know the job, they think they know the risks on the farms, but those risks change day to day. So it's really important each and every time farmers approach a job that they think about what could go wrong, They think about what they could do to mitigate that risk, and then they think about the consequences and basically put those preventive measures in place. Next slide. From a regional point of view, unfortunately, the 5-year average for the Southwest has been 5. Last year, there were 3 fatal injuries in the Southwest. This year, there were 8. The reasons for that are very hard to say, and it would be dangerous to speculate about that. We can't purely blame COVID. That wouldn't be fair. But actually, what we do need to be aware is that the Southwest included 1 child, and actually 5 of them were over the age of 60. So these are older farmers that are possibly a little bit more complacent. The younger farmers seem to have a better idea. They're the next generation. They're going to drive the new good behaviours into the industry, but they're being met with resistance. So we need to encourage older farmers to stay open to actually having challenges. And if somebody tells them that they're not going to do a job that they've been asked to do because they find it's unsafe, then the older farmer better have a very good reason for asking them to do the job, because they know their rights and they know their responsibilities. Next slide, please. So we need it because it's the law, legal, criminal, and civil law. You know, morally, the thing is, if you've seen something that's wrong, if you've seen something that's dangerous on the farm and you don't speak up, somebody gets hurt the next day as a result of it, you're going to feel awful. You know, you do have a moral obligation to speak up, call out bad practices, call out bad behaviours. You know, what's the worst that can happen? You could save somebody's life by doing it. But also there's a financial issue. You know, if something happens as a result of, you know, an accident on the farm, you could be fined. You could get a fee for intervention, which is currently £154 an hour for somebody from HSE to come out, inspect and write up a report. And they take more than a couple of hours to write up a report. So £100 to buy a brand new PTO guard could end up costing you, if you decide you're going to save money, could cost you about £600 in terms of a report, you know. But then from a personal point of view, actually what it could cost you, £21,000 for a prosthetic new arm. And I know that because my friend has one, you know. Also, you could be prosecuted. You'd have lost time costs, overtime. Agency may not be as good as, you know, the person that's actually been hurt. If somebody has had their arm involved in, say, for example, a PTO guard, you're probably going to have to repair the machine, which is going to cost as well. And you do not want to be in the front page of the Western Morning News, you know. So these are the things, legally, morally, financially, why people, you know, should be challenged in terms of doing things wrong or doing things in an unsafe way. Next slide. And then it's all covered with the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. So it's important even for employees to realise that, you know, your employer must provide you with that safe place to work, the safe environment, building, safe systems, the information, training and supervision if it's needed. And these are the things that actually they could be prosecuted under. But also employees have a responsibility to take reasonable care of themselves and other people, and to cooperate with the employer as long as it's safe to do so, and to not interfere with safety arrangements. Next slide. So moving on to this week, hectic week in the year. It's this year, this is the 9th time that I've done Farm Safety Week, because obviously when NFU Mutual created the Farm Safety Foundation and said just go do your stuff, which they're fantastic for doing that, they handed over Farm Safety Week to us as well. So at that point, what I did was I thought, well, look, it's not just about us. So I contacted the NFU, I contacted the HSE, I then went to Scotland, Ireland, Republic of Ireland and Wales, all of which have an equally dismal and shameful safety record, because we all need to talk about it. So if I could get 5 countries talking about the same thing for 5 days, for 1 week in the year, we could get that noise out there and, you know, try and create some sound and some enthusiasm to actually drive that change, because a change in culture and attitude is not something that's going to happen overnight. It takes a bit of time. So next slide. And you can skip over the next, oh yeah, sorry, it's okay. So essentially this year, one of the issues that we're covering, we all know the causes of fatal farm accidents, but also there are 13,000 people that suffer long-term health conditions as a result of working in the industry. So we thought it's important to actually address that as well. Also, given the fact that 5 members of the public this year lost their lives as a result of coming into contact with cattle, it's important for us to reach out to the public as well and actually understand, let them understand what that farmland is being used for. So there was an education piece required as well, because public safety should always be part of your overall health and safety policy from a farming point of view. But really, as well as that, from a public point of view, they should understand what the farmland looks like. That is somebody's livelihood. You know, the crops look lovely, but that's somebody's money. It's their bread and butter. Those animals are lovely, but at the end of the day, those animals are expensive and they cost a fortune to rear. And the last thing you want to do is, you know, let your dog get in contact with them. So next one, please. So yeah, as I said, 11 people were injured by an animal and 5 were members of the public. So you can't ignore something like that. It's really important to address the issue of livestock. So, you know, we do have livestock worrying, but also we have, you know, livestock that actually end up taking the life of a human. Next slide. So essentially that's it. We're talking about minimizing the risks. It's about rethinking the risks. So we want the public to think of the risks of them walking the dog in a field with cattle. We also want the farmland owners. We want the farm managers, the farm workers. Yes, well, Rebecca, you've just asked, does it tend to be cows with calves at foot? Yes, some of them have been newly calved cows, you know, and these are the things that we're trying to get those messages out, that at the end of the day, you're there, you see a lovely calf, you want a picture for the Instagram, you go over there and the next thing you've got a 600 kilo cow running at you because she's going to protect at all costs. So these are the things that people do need to be aware of and think, rather than just cute animals. You know, they will bring you to the ground and they will kill you if you're going to be in any way, shape or form a danger to their calf. You know, so this is the important issues that we wanted to talk about as well. Next slide. So the things that we're trying to let farmers know is that don't be putting dairy bulls into fields that have public rights of way. You know, understand your public rights of way, and you've got responsibilities as well to protect the public if you have a public right of way on your land. Where possible, keep those cows and calves out of the fields with public rights of way and try and put cattle in fields without them. And especially if cattle do need to be put in the field, try and put a permanent or temporary fencing or segregate that cattle, get them as far away. And that includes actually their feeding stations and their water stations as well. And, you know, assessing the temperament of cattle before you put them in the field. And I'm actually working with a group now at Queen's University about a thing called temper gene, and is understanding what people do when an animal has attacked. Do they destroy it? Do they pass it on? What happens? To see whether or not that is actually genetic as well. So that's a really interesting sort of collaborative project that we're working on. Next tip. So, as I said, if they're in there with no segregation, make sure feeding points and water will get them away from the route of the path. Also, livestock that is aggressive or has known to be or suspected to be should not be roaming freely where the public has access. You will, and you probably will, be liable for resulting harm. And then keep monitoring them on a daily basis. Keep the paths clear. The signs are such a great idea, you know, that give information on animals in the field. I saw a sign in the field once and I just thought it was genius. They basically gave the name to the animals. It's like, this is Daisy and Elsie. They've just had calves and they will do anything to make sure you don't disturb the calves or them. So please keep away from them. So you're almost giving a personality to the animal. It doesn't take an awful lot for a big marker to write that out, you know, at specific times. Where there's public access to a fence or a hedge, create the proper gap, because it's important as well for you to think of your exit route and how are you going to get out of that field if anything happens. Next one. All of these are actually on. These are fantastic signs. I have to tell you, if you're a member of the National Farmers Union, you can download them free. Contact Andrew Butler. You can get them free of charge. You can contact the group office for them. They're very good. Stick them everywhere. You know, really importantly, you know, it's very, very important to do that. So you've got to display signs at all entrances to fields with public rights of way. You know, so it's really, it's such a free, simple thing for you to do. So when I tell you farm safety doesn't cost the earth, it doesn't. But actually not doing it could cost a life. Next one, please. So yeah, clear, polite guidance. Point out any man-made or natural hazards. Electric fences are okay if they're properly installed and warning signs are displayed, you know. Non-electrified fencing might result in fewer concerns, obviously, but you've got to educate yourself under the Occupiers Liability Acts of 1957 and the Animals Act of 1971. Next one. So, I'm sorry, it sounds like I'm just going blah, 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 but there's just so much to get through. And obviously the mental health and farming issue is a massive issue as well. And I know others will cover different elements of it, but I'm going to give you a very gentle overview of why it's an issue in the industry and why we should be talking about it. So there were 34 farm worker deaths in 21. So that was the figures that came out at the start of the week, but there were 102 suicides registered in Great Britain in those working in farming and agricultural related trades in the last known figures up to date. They include horticulture, they include farm workers, farm managers, farm owners. So, you know, it's 3 times the amount of people took their own lives in the industry. Now, I know mental health is a very crude indicator of, suicide's a very crude indicator of mental health, but it is those people that have got to that stage where they don't see a way out. And that is something that we do need to give equal airtime to as well, because it's taking people away from our wonderful industry. Next one. So, yeah, the problems that farmers face, they have the same as everybody else in terms of marital issues, you know, relationship problems, all of that kind of thing. However, there are unique stressors in the industry that farmers face that other people don't face. They work on their own all day. 16-hour days are pretty much standard in farming. 16-hour day on your own, because many, many farmers work in isolation. They can be taking on significant debt in order to invest in livestock and new machinery. And also, they are worried. They're in most cases, the farmer's place of business is where they live, so there's no escape from it. They're also at the mercy of the elements. They're at the mercy of trade agreements and international trade and market fluctuations. The international market for UK goods is changing a lot, and there's a lot of anxiety around that. And when there's anxiety, that can create a lot of stress. And stress is very different to pressure, you know, because it means that people can't see a way out of it. Next slide, please. So signs that you may come across, people that you may come in contact with that may be struggling with their mental health right now. And for goodness sake, we've been in lockdown. We've been dealing with this pandemic for 18 months nearly, you know, so we've got to safely assume that most people are struggling. I think it's probably safer to do that than actually wait for those cracks to appear in somebody, because those signs will be individual to everybody. It's really important to be aware of those subtle signs, you know, but in terms of physical, they're harder because people are very good at hiding it. They're very good at basically covering it up because they don't want anybody to actually talk about them or know that much about them. The physical signs you can see is being run down, difficulty sleeping, constantly tired. And you think about that in the context of working on a farm. If you're not sleeping well, if you're constantly tired, if you're run down and you're easily distracted, how dangerous are you when you get behind the wheel of a tractor or at this stage of the season, a combine harvester? Next slide. Emotionally, these are things that will probably be easier for you to find because the person will not be acting in character. they'll be more irritable, more aggressive. They'll maybe withdraw themselves, not come to the pub when everybody else wants to, when they would normally be the person that would be first up there. You know, little conflicts with people, you know, arguing them, calling them out, challenging in them as well. This indecision, inability to concentrate is a very, very worrying, but that along with the increased consumption of caffeine, because if they're going to be working on a farm, given the risks that there are, and given the fact it's got the poorest safety record of any occupation in the UK, it's 20 times more dangerous than the industry average. You know, these are things that can have deadly consequences in farming. Next one. I think the next slide covers basically work and the issues that people can have in terms of the workplace. Have we frozen? Yeah, increased mistakes, taking on too much work. I mean, somebody that works a 16-hour day, taking on more work, dangerous. Negative changes to online conversations, but you've noticed something's not right. What do? You know, how do you start a conversation with somebody about their mental health? It's not the easiest thing to do. If you had a football injury and you were playing five-a-side football, chances are you'd dine out in that for months. People would ask you how you're getting on. Has it recovered? Are you still seeing the physio? They don't do the same with you when it comes to your mental health as well. But the thing is, you can't have a conversation with somebody without being an expert, because you're not diagnosing them. That's not your job. It would be very dangerous for you to even do that. But actually, it's important to remember that you've got to be genuine about it. You've got to actually want to care. You don't have to be an expert, but you just need to care. Next one. And this is the most simple, straightforward question you can ask. And how many times a day do we ask that question? But how many times do we actually wait for an answer? So if you're asking somebody, are they okay? Wait for the answer, because it is a question. And if they don't answer you, ask them again. Next one. So we have resources on the website, and obviously, as Rebecca said, they've got CAM as well on board, and they've got a fantastic helpline. But if you want to learn a little bit more about the issue and how it's affecting rural communities, rural farming families, the little book about Minding Your Head is a great way just to start. It's written in plain English. It's A5 size. Actually, it's not. It's A6 size. It's really small. It's pocket size. It sits along the National Directory of Farm and Rural Support Groups, which is another one which basically gives you every single, I think there's maybe 69 different farm and rural support groups right throughout the UK. So you're so lucky. You've got the Exmoor guys, you've got the Dartmoor guys, you've got the FCN, who are fabulous, who RABI, you know, Princess Countryside Fund. We've got so many ways that people can actually get support. If you want it online, you've got it. If you want it face-to-face, over the phone, anonymously in a forum. If you want to access a platform, you can do the RABI Cuth platform as well. It's amazing. There's so many fantastic organisations out there that can help, that want to help, but it's just up to you to ask for it. So next slide. That's it. That's everything. If anybody wants to know, we have lots of resources on the website, yellowwellies.org. We've got a resources page. You can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, good luck.
Oh, thank you so much, Steph. As you say, that is in a nutshell, and I think we could probably do a whole evening of listening to you, especially as it's Farm Safety Week. We really appreciate your time, and I know you've got to go off to, I think, do a BBC World Service now. Is that correct?
Yes.
Thank you for joining Little Us in our webinar. But I just wanted to, Steph, a couple of things before you do go. So obviously, as trading standards officers, we're regularly out on farms and probably going to farms that not many people go to. What's the sort of most important message we can be getting over to farmers about safety? I've just read about the NFU pledge. Thank you, Andrew, that you know, they can write down one thing and put it on their farm board that they're going to change. But is there a particular message that we can get across?
There are lots of messages. It's actually looking every day, just doing even a mental checklist of things that are particular issues on your farm. You don't have to be an expert in absolutely everything, and don't be afraid to bring in experts. You know, and this is the thing about farmers. Farmers are so selfless. They'll basically say, that's a really dangerous job. Don't you do it, I'll do it. Mm. Without realizing that they're putting their land, their livestock, their machinery more important than they are themselves. They've got to understand that they are the farm's biggest asset. But if they're not in the right headspace, if they're rushing things and taking risks, cutting corners, then they're actually the farm's biggest liability. You know, so we do have a checklist on the website which people can download and just do that little checks on trailers, on, you know, if there's kids on the farm, things like that. But also we've got an emergency plan. And this is a really important thing to have, because if something happens on the farm, you don't know whether that fight or flight is going to kick in. So do you have the number of trading standards? Do you have the number of the police, your local police? Do you have your what 3 words address? Do you have the grid marks? Do you have your local vet? All of these things, or your local NFU branch manager, all those kind of contact numbers that you might forget in the spur of the moment. If you've got an up-to-date farm emergency plan, they're there for you. There's one less thing for you to worry about, and it's there on hand and people can access it. We have it on the website, so use it, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I must agree that what 3 words I actually used the other day, and it was fantastic. I'm a really strong believer in that now. And you know, we spoke, Steph, that we spoke a few weeks ago about, I know, having recently, you know, been involved with a fatal accident, a tragic accident on farm, that also we were saying about if you've got a lone farmer, nobody knows where you are, what time you're coming back, and also how many organisations can be left, you know, kind of picking up the pieces after an accident has happened, which, you know, you're more than willing to pull together, but you didn't want to be in that position in the first place. So, and I think that's probably something we could talk about at another time. But and also you mentioned the Animals Act, which is something we do touch on with trading standards. So that's also not a very well known bit of legislation, I think, amongst a lot of people, especially landowners. So that's another thing. No, and I know FCN as well. Obviously, all the support charities out there are fantastic. I do know FCN have their first face-to-face meeting tonight, so sadly they can't join us. So they're obviously very sat out in the sunshine somewhere. So, but yeah, as I said, we do have Calm on board now. We're really lucky to have them on board. And your leaflets that you referred to, they were fantastic. We had them at the Devon County show, and that was great to be able to give away. And I think also what you said about your checklist, I think we should be downloading them as well and giving them to our officers.
Yeah.
Certainly, personally, I feel, you know, having equipment checked on farm, you know, the sorts of farms we are going to, that's one of the messages as well we can give across. But did anyone else have any questions for Steph while she's here? Because I know she has got to go quite soon. Okay, got away lightly with that, Steph. So if not, any time, obviously everyone's got our email addresses. If you ever want to have any questions, please send them through to us. But thank you, Steph. Really appreciate it. Interest. All right. And good luck with your interview in a moment. So.
Thank you. I'm gonna have to speak slower and clearer. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks very much, Steph. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. So next up is Donna Woolway. She is a specialist problem solver with the police, and she's kindly said that she would do a talk to us tonight on domestic abuse in rural communities, because this is a mental health and wellbeing webinar. We felt that obviously very fitting to talk with us tonight, especially with the increase in these incidents during lockdown. So if I could hand over to Donna, thank you.
So good evening, everyone. As Becky said, my name's Donna Woolway, so I'm one of the specialist problem solvers. There's a team of us, and I've just learned tonight that one of my lovely team members is on the webinar as well. So hi, Sarah. So I cover North and West Devon, and one of the kind of themes and kind of areas that I have been working on recently is around our rural kind of policing and working closely with the rural policing officers, Martin Beck and Kerry, kind of looking at understanding rural problems that we should be kind of problem solving with our partners. And one of those issues is domestic abuse, which is why I wanted to talk to you about the subject tonight. So I've worked for the police for 17 years and gained lots of experience around understanding domestic abuse. I hear of this awful crime every working day, and I work really closely with police officers who apprehend offenders and support victims. I also work very closely with our partners dealing with domestic abuse. But I really understand that some of you may not understand what domestic abuse is. So I kind of sometimes take for granted the knowledge that I have built up over the years. And when we're asking our partners in particular and members of the public to help us in around any of these subjects, I think we forget ourselves sometimes and just forget that not everybody has the knowledge that we have. So I would like to empower people with some more knowledge and understanding, which is so important. That gaining that knowledge and understanding is really important to help start those conversations, which then creates the opportunity for change and ultimately the change in culture, which is what we're looking for. So domestic abuse should not be something that isn't talked about. I think that over, I think more recent times it is talked about more. But there's still those kind of barriers and the lack of understanding that impacts people's ability to talk about it as an open problem. But don't get me wrong, it's not all bad and we are getting there, but we definitely need to do more. So we want to bash down some of those barriers and unearth the hidden causes and harms that we so often hear about. So just a little bit of a health warning. Some of what I'm going to discuss today may make you feel uncomfortable or it may affect you. So please look after yourself. And if you need to talk to someone, please talk to a friend, family member or a colleague, or I will be including some helpline numbers at the end of this presentation. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, so a landmark act has recently been passed in Parliament, and this is the Domestic Abuse Act. If you could just click through a couple of times, just so some of the next kind of bits pop up, that would be great, thank you. And apologies, I can't see what you're displaying because I'm on a single screen rather than double screen, so apologies. Hopefully this will go okay. So the new ruling has marked out a statutory definition of domestic abuse so that all elements are recognised as a crime. Bear with me a moment. So the actual definition that's been set out in the Act, the behaviour of a person towards another person is domestic abuse if both persons are over the age of 16 and are personally connected to each other and the behaviour is abusive. So behaviour is abusive if it consists of any of the following but not limited to coercive control, and I'll just kind of give a few examples for each kind of area, like each behaviour, just so kind of puts it into perspective as to what it is, because sometimes it's not always fully understood. So coercive control, an act or pattern of acts of assault, threats, humiliation and intimidation, abuse that is used to harm, punish or frighten the victim. Psychological and emotional abuse, intimidation, withholding affection, turning children and friends against you, being belittled, excessive contact, manipulation. If you can just keep clicking so that the list is up, that would be great. Physical or sexual abuse, rape, pressure, sexual harassment, degrading and injury during a sexual act. Financial or economic abuse, so that can be total control over family finances, no spending unless permitted, accounting for every penny, restricting access to items that cost money, denying you food, and allowing you to only buy particular items. And last one, harassment and stalking. Following when out, checking emails, phone calls, regularly sending unwanted gifts, making unwanted malicious communications. That list does go on, but we'll just cover a few of them. Online and digital abuse, stalking, placing false or malicious information about you on social media, being trolled, monitoring or controlling emails and phone calls, image abuse, and again, there's more on that list. So the DA Act is a monumental step towards transforming the response to domestic abuse, helping to prevent offending, protect victims, and ensure they have the support that they need. So if we can go on to the next slide. So responding to domestic abuse has many different elements and involves police and partners in ensuring that the offender is dealt with and the victim is supported. Our safeguarding responsibilities being a real multi-agency response, and that's made even more complex when there are children involved. We have the police response, there to apprehend offenders of domestic abuse, and this can lead to a large wraparound kind of like a large wraparound of victim care and supporting the victim with coming forward, making a statement, and ultimately securing an outcome that robustly deals with that offender. This can be achieved in a variety of ways and reached using court orders and injunctions and robust restrictions that can be applied to the offender to prohibit harmful behaviour. This is not achieved in isolation, and a huge amount of partnership working takes place to achieve these outcomes. We also have our independent domestic abuse support services, all kind of based locally throughout each area. I haven't included any local support within this slide because I wasn't sure kind of the geographic spread of the people listening. So I'll come on to this at the slide at the end. They're all available online, or they can be supplied if anybody would like me to. We also have our independent domestic abuse support services. They're there to assist with emergency accommodation of victims and the ongoing support that a victim requires throughout this often traumatising and life-changing process. To ensure that all parts of the country are providing the right response, we have the Domestic Abuse Bill. As mentioned, this is our overarching legal governance designed to promote awareness of domestic abuse, protect and support victims and their families, to transform the justice process to prioritise victim safety and to provide an effective response to perpetrators, and to drive consistency and better performance in the response to domestic abuse across all local areas, agencies and sectors. So when we're talking about domestic abuse in rural areas, this bill covers everywhere, so everybody is covered. Each local authority area have a domestic abuse local partnership board. This board drives local strategic decisions to ensure that their area is equipped to deliver the services set out within the bill. And then kind of coming down from that, to drive the locally led grassroots activity, we have the Sexual Violence and Domestic Abuse Forums. So I chair the Northern Devon Forum. We have a meeting every 3 to 4 months. So if anybody is interested in learning more about the forum or becoming a member, then please do get in touch. I'll make sure my contact details are made available. So this forum encourages connection and sharing between agencies. We drive local projects and initiatives within the local areas, but we also connect up across the county as well to ensure some consistency and some sharing of information. So next slide, please. Just to make sure that I'm on track, there should be a number of boxes, so hopefully I'm on the right slide here. So I would just leave that slide up for just a little moment. I'm not going to read out all of those. I would just like if everybody on the call could just read through those in their own time. I'll just give a little moment just so that they can take in some of those figures there. Okay, so hopefully everyone's had a chance to just read through some of those facts and some of the numbers that are involved. There is a dark and hidden figure amongst these already dark statistics, and that is the number of cases that go unreported. And that figure we will never know. And that's unreported not only to the police, but also our support agencies as well. We do understand that not everybody wants to report to the police. And that's why we do have our external support agencies that are there to support those victims. So we're not able to narrow the stats and figures down to be really area specific, i.e. pull figures off to purely represent rural and isolated areas. These figures represent our entire community, whether that's urban or rural and isolated. But we often refer to domestic abuse as a hidden harm. We don't know or understand what isn't reported or what isn't seen. I think I've already heard that mentioned tonight with other crime types. It's exactly the same with domestic abuse. It is important to understand that people living in rural and isolated communities with the complexities of rural living, which again we've already heard of tonight through the previous lady that spoke, a perpetrator within a domestic abuse relationship can use those vulnerabilities to their advantage to further their abuse and control of a relationship. It doesn't matter how old, what your background is, your race, your religion, or your gender. It can happen to anyone at any stage of their lives. So as a colleague, professional member of the community, a friend or a family member, being able to spot the signs of domestic abuse, and more importantly, knowing what to do is the first step in becoming someone who is an active responder to domestic abuse rather than a passive responder. So we're not asking that you step in as a professional. There are many support agencies, as I've already referred to, and the police and other specialists that are there to do that. I am simply asking that you become aware, you take notice, that you don't turn a blind eye, and you become curious. So some of the signs that a victim might display that he or she is in an abusive relationship are physical injuries, excuses for frequent injuries, stress, anxiety or depression, absent from work and social occasions, personality changes, being jumpy or nervous, low self-esteem, lack of independent communication, self-blame, increased alcohol or drug use, lack of money, damage to property. There are others as well. There's many other signs, but yeah, they're just some of the ones that you might well see. An important thing to remember is that you must never put yourselves in danger, and always seek help, advice and assistance where needed. So if you are concerned about someone, then if in any doubt, you should dial 999.
Donna, could I just ask, I know obviously again with a lot of us being probably the only people that can go onto some farms, everyone's got different experiences of what they look for with domestic abuse, and I think people maybe worry about, are they overreacting by phoning like 101 or 999? But I think what you said about become curious, that's probably the best advice I've heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And
you don't need to worry about phoning 101, even if you feel silly about doing it. You don't know, do you?
No, you don't. And I've got a slide that's coming up in a moment, and I do apologise, Becky, I haven't been keeping you up to date with which slide, so I have no idea what slide you're on. I'm going to check that in a moment.
Oh, don't worry. We're on the slide with the statistics. So.
Can you move on a couple, please? Slide 7. Thank you.
There's a nice picture of farmland and forests now.
Okay, can you go on another one, please?
And yeah, you've just said about your.
So that's what I just said, and then if you can go on to the next one, that would be great. And then we're all up to speed. Sorry. Don't be afraid. Yes, 101 is busy, but as I think it was Martin that might have said, there's lots of other ways of contacting the police now. So again, I'll come to that at the end. But we'd rather you make that call if you're concerned enough to think that there's something not right, then we'd rather you tell someone. But there is another way, again, I'll come on to those kind of how you can do that and the best way to do it. But it really is about not turning that blind eye. I think deep down we often know that there's something isn't quite right, and it is, like I said, being curious and acting on those feelings that make you feel uncomfortable. But hopefully, if I can just kind of come on to my next slide, I might be able to help a little bit with doing that. So we tend to focus very much on what to look out for with a victim, but at the end of every victim is a perpetrator. So parts of the domestic abuse bill is setting out an expectation that more work will be done to support perpetrators. There is often a deep-rooted history and a reason as to why someone is offending, and the key priority is to prevent that offender from re-offending with the same person or moving on to someone different. So the signs to look out for if you are concerned that someone is an abuser, so controlling behaviour, bullying, humiliating the victim, shouting and yelling, threats of violence, destroying personal items, limiting contact with family, friends and work colleagues. That's a really strong indicator, and checking on whereabouts or making accusations that the victim is a perpetrator. So I will provide slides with support numbers and organisations that you can refer to at the end of the presentation. Can we have the next slide, please? It should say belief at the top. I say, are we on the right slide, Becky? If you can just click through a couple of times.
Okay, we are on belief now.
That's lovely, thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so what can you do if someone approaches you or you are concerned that someone you know might be a victim of domestic abuse? The first and foremost, most important thing you can do is believe. The power of being believed can mean more to a victim than you will ever understand. You must never insinuate abuse. So that's a really important thing. Never insinuate, but what you can do is talk to that person. And again, I think that's been covered tonight. It's talking to that person and asking, if you do find anything that's worrying you, I'm here, so that they know that there's someone there. If you can click through a couple of times, Becky, just to bring up the rest of the questions, and then ask, are you okay? And as we've learnt tonight already, wait for that answer. And do you need anything? And also to be able to open up a safe space for someone to make a phone call and provide contact details of specialist support services. So that's really important. If you can picture someone in an abusive relationship, they may never be able to get away to that safe space. So if that can be provided, then that would be amazing. So next slide, please. It should say the Willows Dawn story. Okay, so I would really love to have shown this video, but it was 20 minutes long, so it would have taken up the whole of my presentation. So I didn't think I should do that. But I would urge each and every one of you to take some time to watch this short film. It's available on YouTube. Just search the Willows Dawn story. And when you've watched it, or whilst you're watching it, if you can just think to yourselves just some of these questions here. So why was Dawn so vulnerable? How could the different people in her life have recognised the signs and intervened sooner? If the husband's attitude was challenged earlier on, how could this have impacted his behaviour towards Dawn, and what was the changing point for Dawn, and how was she helped at the end? So just to kind of think about those questions, and hopefully some of what you've learnt tonight might help. So moving on, if we could please. So it should be a brown slide with Alpha Vesta. So I've just spoken about safe places, and we often talk about safe spaces for victims and somewhere where they feel comfortable in being able to discuss and disclose information and seek help. So in North Devon and other parts of the force, we have worked really closely with a company called Alpha Vesta, who specialise in providing specialist and bespoke support to employers, businesses and organisations of all sizes. It doesn't matter if they've got 1 employee or 350 employees. Their main ethos is to embed culture change throughout an organisation. They provide free training to help employees understand what domestic abuse is, how to recognise the signs, and what they can do to support someone. Lucy, the founding managing director, talks passionately about how a place of work can be a safe place for someone living with domestic abuse, and sometimes the only opportunity they might have to seek help. I've also been lucky enough to meet a lady called Fiona Bowman, who is a domestic abuse survivor. She tells her story to raise awareness of domestic abuse in the workplace, and will openly say that if it hadn't been for her understanding manager, she is sure she would have died at the hands of her abuser. She has written a book called Did I Wake You Pet? It's available online. I strongly recommend anyone to read this book. If, as an employer, you think you would like some advice on embedding culture change and writing a domestic abuse policy, please get in touch with Alpha Vesta. Their contact details are on this slide. And then the next slide, which should be the support for victims and perpetrators. So people often refer to domestic abuse as taking place behind closed doors, but we can all see and we can all hear. We want as many people to understand that domestic abuse does happen in rural countryside homes and throughout all areas of society. So I haven't put the local domestic abuse contact numbers on here because of the differing areas that people are from. But please search for local support if needed, and please get in touch. And then there's some other helpline numbers there. Just to come on to the police. So in an emergency, it's always 999. 101 if it's something that's happened and you need some support, help or advice, or to report something. There's online reporting forums, and also if you're an organisation or a partner organisation, there is a way in which you can supply information to us, which is the partnership information sharing form, but that is only for partners. So I think that's it. I think I've come to the end. So if anybody's got any questions, I'm ready to take them.
Oh, thank you so much, Donna. If there are any questions, I know
just something in the chat there, Becky. Just people can't always ring. Are there live chats available? Do you know the answer to that, Donna? If there's any, would there be some way that they could talk online?
Yeah, absolutely. So if that's aimed at the police, then yes, we do have live chats. I understand that there isn't always live chats available. I think it depends on how things are going in the contact centre, but there's always the option to email. So there's many ways of reporting and contacting the police now. It's not just your 999 101. So yeah, yes is the answer to that. But yeah, please do take a look at our contacts page, and it all kind of lists out there with the different options.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Donna. I think that's another, with these webinars, what we aim to do is have, we've had all of the speakers have been valid over the awful webinars we've been done, wonderful speakers, and it's just a taster really, and we're getting you to do sort of whistle-stop tours of these subjects. Again, this is such a hard-hitting subject. When you say 7 women killed per month, it's completely unacceptable and it's shocking. And I think through Alpha Vesta, I think that's something that we could probably take back to our management to look for training for officers, just knowing the subtle signs we can again look out for.
Actually, Becky, you've just reminded me something I did want to drop in, and it wasn't in my slides. The importance of understanding how offenders can use pets and animals to control.
Yes, we did talk about that, didn't we?
Yeah, so there is some training available through Alpha Vesta around understanding domestic abuse and pets. So she doesn't overly talk about cattle or sheep, or some of your larger kind of farming animals, but certainly dogs and cats. So yeah, I would highly recommend that training. It just really opens your eyes to some of the further signs that you could spot and notice.
Because I think we were saying, weren't we, if people can sort of hold children, if they're the hold, that means somebody that's not leaving a relationship they should do, but equally that can be, animals can mean as much to people.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I know the RSPCA did used to have a kennelling in place for victims of domestic abuse, but I don't think that's going on anymore. So, but it's something that's so important.
So I'm going to ask Sarah if she can just pop some information about the charity that she works with. I don't know whether Sarah can. I hope Sarah can do that. But a really amazing charity
If she'd
that
like to talk,
help.
that would be
Or if
fantastic.
you can talk, yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, just very,
Sorry to
very
put you on the spot.
quickly. No, not at all, not at all. Happy to have the opportunity just to mention Refuge for Pets, and I appreciate that it may not apply in the sort of community to which we're talking tonight, but I'm sure many of you are dog owners, cat owners, and pet owners, as well as farm animals. But yeah, they are a fostering service for animals that particularly are in a sort of part of a family relationship that's where domestic violence is occurring. So what we can do is we can get those animals, and they are anything from mice to cats to dogs to horses, snakes, rats, whatever they may be. We will take them in for a temporary period of up to a year with the owner's consent, and foster that animal, fully covering the vet fees, food, and anything that animal needs, until such a time as the person, the owner, or the owners, if they manage to sort things out and the domestic violence no longer exists, or if that person breaks away from that relationship and starts a whole new life, they can be reunited with their pet. So it's free to the victim, and basically it's based on the very fact that, you know, as you rightly say, Donna and colleagues, that many victims will stay in domestic very violent relationships because they're afraid of what will happen to their pets. So I will get the details and pop them in the chat bar for you. And if anyone would like to know a little bit more about that, myself or Mary, the charity founder, would be happy to come and talk to you.
We'd really appreciate that, Sarah, if you could let us know your details, because I think other, you know, people don't want to sign over their animals, and the fact that they're going to get them back when they are in a better place is just such a wonderful thing that, you know, we can promote. I mean, I do know, without giving names, there's a farm I'm dealing with that they will not leave because of their cats, and they're worried about losing all of their cats. But if there's somewhere like yourself that they know once they are sorted in a better place, they can get them back, that's going to be such a weight lifted for them. So
yeah, please get them to get in touch, and we will be able to help. And it's basically supporting the animals and the victims in this scenario. So and like you say, knowing that you can have your animal back at some point, and that they're safe and all of their care needs are accounted for and dealt with. And I'm very proud to be a trustee of the charity.
Are you able to put details of that charity on the...
I'm doing it momentarily for you.
Thank you very much.
Sorry, Becky, we just had one other question, if that was okay. Do we know rates and types of domestic abuse in farming? I don't know whether that's something that we would have to hand that information, but
I haven't got it to hand, and it is just it again, it's that hidden harm. So yes, we do have people report, and we know what we know. Like I said in my slides, it is quite hard separating out exactly what's happened where in the statistics. So we'd have to do a little bit more digging to find that out. As for types, it's such a personal kind of situation. It varies, and I don't think any domestic abuse case can ever really be the same, because we're dealing with people, and we all know how complex relationships, lives, and people can be, and then adding in the rest of the complexities. Yeah, so types is a really tricky one. I don't think I can give a straight answer on that. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think it's just such a vast area, isn't it? That again, one that we can talk about for all evening, really. And I really appreciate that, Donna. That's really given us a good introduction, and I think probably something that a lot of agencies that are in the farming partnership, we would like to explore a bit further, I think. So we'd like to return to where we started off. Now we'd like to go back to Martin, Kerry and Pete from Devon and Somerset. I know they don't match, but there you go. You got Devon and Cornwall and Avon and Somerset, but we're all one, so they all match up. They'd like to talk about dog attacks, dog thefts, the countryside code, and I think a bit of wild camping, so a bit of variety now. So I will hand over to our good colleagues, Martin, Kerry and Pete. Thank you.
Thanks, Becky. Good to be back here talking to you about some of the issues we face daily as rural police officers. I've got just 5 or 6 slides to show you, nothing too gruesome, but just a rose profile, what we're seeing, etc. Pete and Kerry, just jump in where you can, please. Next slide, please. So I don't know many farmers who haven't had their livestock attacked, and if there is a farmer who hasn't, they'll know somebody who has. So there's a lot going on with this, and we also recognise that perhaps most farmers think the police don't care about it. We are here to change that if that's the case. We want police officers to understand the impact it has on farms, farming, distress to animals, and the knock-on it has to mental health. But within livestock worrying, we know it's hugely advertised now in the press and the media. You see it regularly in the news. There's lots of issues with it, which we've identified on the list on the left. So sometimes I've even heard somebody phone up and say it's not a police matter, and that's outrageous. It is. It's a criminal offence. We know there's repeat victims out there, so I want to know how we can better support them. We know it's underreported because people think, well, what's the point of reporting it? So we can't get the true picture. We mentioned that before about getting the true picture. Lack of staff knowledge, just hinted on that. Again, we're here to, as rural affairs officers, rural crime officers, to make sure officers have the knowledge they need to be able to deal with it. And if you see an officer who doesn't know what he's talking about, tell them to speak to us. Lines of inquiry, quite often it's confusing or frustrating, whether it may be lines of inquiries, but the investigations get halted. We can help explain why those reasons are sometimes. And we know there's victims' frustration out there, what's being done about it. So livestock worrying is, at the moment, the legislation can take place on agricultural land and other places like uplands. The owner or the person in charge of the dog will be guilty of a criminal offence if it's proved, or we take it further. Livestock worrying is currently only an offence if the incident takes place on agricultural land, basically. That's a summary of what it means. And at the moment, the fine is only up to £1,000. And so I'll go on to another slide to explain in a minute where we think legislation is going in the upcoming bill. The legislation basically defines it as attacking livestock. We call it livestock worrying, but what a silly word, worrying. We know these are horrendous attacks sometimes. Chasing livestock in ways which are likely to cause injury or suffering. That's another definition of what livestock worrying can be. And being at large, and on a lead or otherwise under close control in a field or an enclosure where there are sheep. Interestingly, the Act at the moment only says livestock is cattle, sheep, goats, swine, horses, poultry. It doesn't include the exotic farm animals at the moment, the alpacas, the buffaloes, the ostriches, even ostriches, and some of the farm deer. So we know more farmers are keeping these animals as well. At the moment in the Act, the penalty is really only a financial one. There's no powers in there to make control or destruction orders on dogs. It has to be done separately. Pete or Kerry, anything to add to that? Just explaining what the legislation is currently.
No, I think with COVID's one of two things really with farmers. Farmers really love the fact that people are at home buying dogs, out walking along the countryside, finding their stolen property. And I think for a really short period of time, the farmers were quite happy people were out there. They weren't so worried about footpaths because the cattle weren't out there, the sheep didn't have lambs. But very quickly, we've seen this massive rise in problems where people can't control their dogs. They're not following the countryside code. And to be honest, just common sense. If you can't control your dog, why would you let it in a field of sheep and cows who, can't run away from these things? They are just victims to some horrendous attacks, really.
Thanks, Pete. Next slide, please. I only have here what we're seeing in Devon. I haven't called it Cornwall, and obviously I haven't seen Pete's figures, but clearly Exmoor was obviously a shared area which we police under the Park Authority. The figure on the left shows our figures going back a number of years across the different local authorities. You can see West Devon, Torridge, followed by rural Teambridge, does feature quite heavily. And we do focus attention in those areas where we can and try and get the local policing teams to do the best they can, certainly understand the legislation. And then the graph on the right really just shows it's a rash. It happens absolutely everywhere. So I think it's fair to say this will be similar in Dorset, in Gloucestershire, in Somerset, Cornwall. You'll see a similar map. It is everywhere. It's basically, as Pete said, it's down to irresponsible dog ownership. Next slide, please. So next one, just what's the cost? Got some NFU M figures here, and from Sheepwatch estimated that around 15,000 sheep a year are killed by dogs. I can't substantiate that. I haven't got those figures, but that's from Sheepwatch. That's really high. And then from that, we can estimate what the cost would be. And last year, over £1 million in cost to the farmer. Certainly, that's obviously what the insurance figures are showing anyway. It's a huge issue.
I think they're in terms of cost as well. We've not obviously just the financial costs, but we touched on earlier, is it the final straw? There's a lot of stuff going on. You've worked really hard to get your stock up to where they are today, and then it must be absolutely heart-wrenching if you come out one morning and there's a load of them being sort of chewed by a dog. So yeah, there's a sort of mental health side of it as well.
So a couple of little bits of stats on the side there as well. Again, NFUM stats. 64% of dog owners are letting their pets roam free in the countryside. And our simple message is always going to be that if you see livestock, just slip the lead on. I don't know how many dogs I've seen that have got poor recall or train their dogs to have good recall. I think it's really low. So a sheep or moving animal, wildlife, too big a fun for an animal not to chase. So the simple message is, I saw an interesting news report, I think it was last week, of a farmer in Dorset who lost a cow. And really harrowing account he gave, and his simple message was, put your dog on a lead. I think that should be the mantra. Same as when you get in the car and you put your seatbelt on. You should be putting your dogs on a lead near livestock. 42% dog owners have been walking their pets more often during the pandemic. I can believe that. And 40% of dog owners surveyed accept that pets could cause the injury of death to farm animals. So people know it can happen. Next slide, please. I like that there, Alexander. I think dogs do have selective hearings. That's down to the recall. There's lots of books out there to train your dog to recall. I don't think people understand it. They can certainly get advice out there from dog therapists and behaviour schools. We need to get people train their dogs recall properly. Just a little bit about the act that's going through Parliament, Animal Welfare, Cat Animals Bill. As I understand it, I think Andrew Butler's on this call. He knows a lot more about than I do. But simply, there's been lots of lobbying for many years over the failings of perhaps the current legislation. And a few years ago, a number of forces got together, part of the all-parliamentary working group on livestock worrying. There was some reports made. There was some sort of literature made as well. I think it was the start of some of this lobbying got better and better. So I think the new bill proposes new powers to enable the police to respond to livestock worrying incidents more effectively, making it easier for them to collect evidence, and in most serious cases, seize and detain dogs to reduce the risk of further incidents. So that can include increasing the scope of livestock species. So we want to see the alpacas, etc., as described as what livestock is under the Act. Also, new locations will hopefully be included. So roads, footpaths, as long as there's livestock, haven't strayed onto those roads. As I say, there's also powers to seize dogs under particular serious instances as well. So when certain things have happened, be more powers to seize those dogs. I'm trying to think of the other ones we've got. New powers to take samples from livestock. So taking powers, we haven't got a power to take a sample for comparison from an animal which has been attacked and a dog. Hopefully that will change. This will help us because at the moment sometimes we have to end prosecutions or investigations because we haven't got the necessary evidence to take it further. I think also there's going to be modified powers of entry, which means that police can enter premises. We can't at the moment for livestock to seize the dog, which is really important so we can get that forensic evidence. Making dog control orders, disqualification, destruction orders will come into that as well. and of course increased penalties. Really important. I can't keep up with all the questions, but we'll come back to those, I think. Pete, anything on the animals bill or Kerry?
For me, it brings the offence to a crime, the 21st century crime. If I asked most of the members of the public, could the police investigate it? They'd assume that we could, and we can't. We're limited. So this brings it up for me. You know, I can take forensic samples, whether you want me to or not. I can put your door in if I get a warrant. I can seize your dog if I want to. All the things that you would expect a policeman to be able to do already for what is, you know, quite a vile crime, really. When we think about the mental health and well-being of farmers, it's not that one sheep or two sheep which the NFU and Cornish Mutual will pay out for. Actually, if they're doing 4-6 lambs a year, the financial implication of attacking a herd of sheep is tens of thousands of pounds, but you can't insure against that. So actually, when a farmer comes to me now with this bill, and if it goes through as we read it, it really a game changer, I think.
Yeah, just to add that the bill, I think, had its first hearing. It needs to go through second, then it goes to the Lord. So we're a little way off yet, but it's going to be promising, hopefully. So really looking forward to that. A couple of things here from Councillor Mott. In my community, is often verbal abuse from farmers. Yeah, and it needs to be reported. We need to try and encourage people to report it. As simple as that. If they can be identified, police should follow it up. What's the rights of farmers? Who's this from? Becky. What's the rights of farmers now in terms of shooting dog and dog warring warm once? It hasn't changed. Animals Act does protect farmers if their dogs are attacking or about to attack, as in the warring sheep. It's not a right to shoot. It's a defence once you've done it, as it were. It's something you have to report within 48 hours. I think it's probably best to consider other options before shooting the dog. I have seen places where people just grab their guns first and shoot. That's down to the farmer to justify and say it's not a right. There is a defence under the Animals Act. So it can act as a deterrent to tell people that it's an option, but certainly it's an option they could use. Last slide, Kerry. Do you want to take the last slide?
Yep. Go ahead, next slide please. So what do you do should you be lucky enough to have, which I'm sure a lot of you have experienced, one of these attacks? Well, like you've said before, it is a crime and we do need it to be reported, firstly so we can investigate it and find out what's going on and find that offending dog if possible. Also, as part of our picture, if we don't know what's going on, we can't build up a picture of where there's a heat spot and direct our resources to it. So if an attack is ongoing, if there's a dog out there and it's ongoing when you're looking at it, you'd use 999. Don't be afraid to use that number. People use it for all sorts of ridiculous reasons. Please use it if there's an incident ongoing. If it's happened, everything's calmed down and there's nothing that we need to get out for urgently, then 101, and we've already discussed the ways you can record a crime with us. Don't forget, we'll need directions if it's in a field that's away from a farm. What 3 words? Postcode, directions, near to a landmark, etc., to help any officers that are going to attend to find out where they're going. If you are attacked or have sheep that are attacked, try and gather some evidence if you can. So if there is a dog nearby or a vehicle or a person or anybody that's involved in the offence, take some clear photographs, any video evidence, but obviously don't put yourself at risk. If a vet attends, you've got any paperwork, any costings in relation to any follow-up for animal repairs, etc., animal attendance, then please keep that for our prosecution or any investigation. And if it's raining and there's carcasses, please try and cover them so that when we do get there, we can see what's there and take our own photographs, etc. If you have got footpaths or anything going across your land, I think it was touched on earlier in the Yellow Wellies presentation by Steph, if you can make sure that your signs are up, people know where they're going, things are clearly labelled, and that should reduce, hopefully, the chances of dogs going off plot and people raging around on land where they're not supposed to be. So try and keep your signage up to date. Thank you. Next slide.
That's the last one. I just pick up on there. People are asking where to get the signs. And Andrew Butler's put on there, obviously NFU members can get them. I won't be NFU centric. Also Cornish Mutual, I've seen them from Farmers Guardian. So the people are, you can get various signs from various places if you're members of various insurers, etc. And of course you can make your own and laminate and put them up. And of course, if people are tearing them down and regularly tearing them off the fence posts, off the gates, let us know. That's repeated criminal damage, it's antisocial behaviour. We can deal with that as well. So
is something you could, sorry Martin to interrupt, is that something you can do if that's I have some farmers who are in a very public place. They are claiming that their sheep are being attacked by dogs on a regular basis, because I think also with carcasses that's very good, like Kerry, what you were saying, you know, that they might turn around and say, well actually they died because they were attacked by a dog, and obviously, if they've got the carcasses there covered, then that's also evidence to protect them for any welfare complaints we might get. If they're not members of any scheme, that's okay? Is it for them to draw up their own signs? And if people say they're on a public footpath, if they repeatedly get them torn down, that's criminal damage, and it's acceptable for them to put up their own signs? Because I think there's a bit of you know, in terms of signs, there was a bit of worry about you can't put up a sign about saying this dog bites or this horse kicks. Is that acceptable?
What you're asking people to do is keep their dogs on a lead. That's a polite request. We're not
Yeah.
we're not pointing out some liability because of what you've got in the field. We're just asking people to keep their dogs on a lead near your sheep. Again, perhaps the wording for cattle could be slightly different. I think the NFU sign reflects that. So yeah, you can put up your own signs. If you're concerned, get legal advice about the sign. But typically, you can look on the internet. You'll see what signs people are putting out through our insurers. And if you go along the similar lines, you should be okay.
Great, thanks.
We have got leaflets, etc. available. I've just popped in our worrying leaflet there for everybody who wants to click onto it. It should take you directly to it. You can print that off, download it, have a look at it in your own leisure.
I think we'll put that as part of our pack in. I know we have got those leaflets, but I think for especially this time of the year, any officers going out. I know I've had a question from Maria about are trail cameras or similar any good for capturing evidence in hotspot areas?
Yes, you can use those on your land. Obviously, if you're going to capture private information, there's some interesting discussions about how you keep the data. Certainly on your own land, they're not recording your neighbours' ongoings. You know, that's fine. And this is interesting because I imagine you're putting it up because it keeps on happening. So if it keeps on happening, the local police will probably want to know, and they can speak to us, and we can try and problem solve that. Try and find out who is it the same person? Is there something wrong with the? Can we engineer a solution for it? And get talking about it. So if farmers are suffering ongoing issues, we do want to hear about it. I think that comes to the end of, there we go, onto dog theft. Right, dog theft, really interesting subject. I think most people have come across or seen dog theft in the social media, in the news. Next slide, please. So dog theft isn't necessarily a rural crime issue. It's something which happens in urban areas. It happens in all sorts of locations. It happens to be that personally, I picked this up within our team because I wanted to do something about it. We were getting some really small reports about farm dogs going missing, working dogs. Really small in numbers. But however, it does occasionally happen, and it's one of the worst things that can happen to you if your companion goes missing. Just say for this. For these slides, we've also got Sarah Daniels Day, a problem solver. She's been working on this issue with me on a small working group for Devon Cornwall Police. And so, Sarah, please chip in when you need to. Just a few slides here about social media and the news. Just keep on flicking through those, please. Keep on clicking. You've seen on the news, lots and lots of things happening. Keep on clicking. Lots of things going on. Social media really hyping things up. And that contagion's kind of fueled the fear. So some of the things we're trying to do is to bring back what is really going on, who holds the data. There's lots of charities out there making quite interesting claims from data information they had. How has that information been quantified? So like all things in policing, we try and look at the evidence base. We try and look at what is really going on to find out what our response is going to be. So next slide, just to explain in Devon and Cornwall, we've gone through, Sarah's gone through, in fact, the data for the last 5 years. And as you can see, we've always had an issue with dogs being stolen. It's nothing unusual. And if you look for the last 5 years, it's been pretty similar numbers. But if you look at the last 2 years, it's gone up slightly. So we've seen a slight increase from last year. But actually, if you go back a couple of years, we had an even higher increase of dog thefts well before the pandemic started, and the increase in prices for our dogs. So why is it happening? As I say, I think it's always been there. So then the next thing we had to do is take apart that data to find out what sort of thefts are we getting. And I don't think many of the journalism I've seen have actually done this because they haven't got access to this information. I'll just go on to say that if we look at the amount of dogs out there in the community, from PDSA data, they're saying around there's 10 million dogs in the UK now, which equates to something like a quarter of all adults own a dog or have access to a dog, which are huge numbers. And again, this is how it impacts back into the antisocial behaviour and the livestock worrying that's going on, perhaps. So year-on-year dog theft in Devon and Cornwall Police, as in other force areas, probably fairly similar. I think it varies. I know that Wiltshire had far less than we had. Don't know why that is. So for April 19 to March 20, we saw 60 dog thefts in our force area. In the same period, 2021, the last year, there were 77. So far this year, from the start of this year, we've seen about 36. So from the yearly increase from last year, it's around 25-28%. It's not big. In numbers, it is percentage, but not numbers. And previous years, you can see 16-17, there were 65 thefts, 17-18, 84 thefts. That's the hardest year we've seen in the last 5 years. But it's very consistent levels and for a variety of circumstances. What we can clearly see is around 70 on average over the last 5 years. From these calculations, we can suggest that per head of population of 100,000 people, there's a 0.7. So just say 0.1 chance of having your dog stolen. And that's a population density of about 1.7 million people in Devon and Cornwall. From those 77 dogs, our most popular have been Staffy Bull Terriers, Spaniel breeds and crosses, Chihuahuas and Pugs. I think that's reflected in the top 10 stolen in the UK. Locations they're getting taken from, mainly from insecure gardens and properties, insecure vehicles, theft by finding, and that includes being tied up outside shops. And again, if they're being tied up, we don't know if they've wandered off. And in the very, very rare cases, we are seeing some violence being used to take the dog. That is actually still quite rare, although those are the cases which are fueling the fear of dog theft because you'll see it on social media.
Martin, sorry, it's probably just worth saying as well that a lot of, because of the hype and the fear out there, that if people lose their dog, they automatically start to assume that they have been stolen also. So that isn't helping the figures a lot, because actually in 9 times out of 10, those dogs either are found or do return. But because of the hype, that's feeding into people's fears. Even if the dogs have just run off, they're making assumptions they've been stolen.
Well, we're not going to play this down, though. For every single victim who's lost a dog, it is heartbreaking.
Absolutely.
And this clearly links back into the mental health aspect, that one dog theft is too much. The effect it has on the farmer or the business who loses his dogs is tremendous. And a part of our work has been making sure the police service understands that and we respond accordingly to it. I'll just go back to the data. So if we look at those 77, we reckon around 30% of dog thefts are where the offender or suspect is known to the victim. That could be a dispute over dog ownership. So that's 30% of those dogs. There's a person who knows where it's gone and why. 12% of domestic related, and I hate to talk about the dreadful subject of domestic abuse again. 9% we think are missing or lost dogs presumed stolen. So maybe 7 of those are lost rather than stolen. But again, if somebody phones up and says to us, my dog has been stolen, we're really obliged to kind of look into that and call it as a theft to start off with. I think somebody's put on there about having dogs castrated. Yeah, that could be in there. So what's left is around 29-30% of we don't know. We just don't know why. So it's again a small number across Devon and Cornwall for the whole year are taken by unknown methods. Whether that's organised crime, we don't know, but it just sits there, and that's what we're trying to share our information and data around the UK to find out if we do have people going around taking dogs and taking them further afield. We know it has happened. We recovered some dogs in Essex and in Manchester last month. So we know it could be connected outside the region. Just going on to that. Sarah, anything else to say about the interpretation?
No, that's very well covered.
Okay, the other thing is we looked at why would you not want to take somebody's dog? And clearly, we know that through social media, and we've seen it if you're trying to buy a dog now, the dog prices have gone up tremendously. So the motivation for the theft could be for resale. You take a dog to sell it on. Simple. That's why most of these probably take things. They're going to try and sell it on, make some money. There could be something for breeding. It sounds quite basic, but take a dog so it can be bred from. And also for demand rewards. There are a few occasions around the UK where people have advertised their dog has been stolen, and they put a reward up, and by chance, whether they're connected or not, the dog is found and a reward is claimed. So that's quite nasty. Next slide, please. There we go. So really, it's about taking extra care. Prevention is the cure for most things. So that's not that happened in the first place. So if your dog is stolen, it's really important you tell the police straight away, and some of our partners as well. So it needs to go onto the national pet register. Sarah, what are the other ones we're trying to ask people to do? So it's National Pet Register.
Yeah, taking photos of your dog. So yeah, all of those really. I don't know if we've got kind of leaflets that we're going to be sharing. We've got some of the messages that we've shown on social media, which perhaps we could share with this group as well. Perhaps we could forward all of those on the social media messages that we've been putting out on Devon and Cornwall Police.
Yeah, absolutely. Please do any messages. So we have the Farming Partnership newsletter that goes out, but it was going out a few times a year, well, with lockdown, but I think it should go out a bit more often now. So certainly we can put all your messages out there. Absolutely.
That would be great. Another thing is obviously is a legal requirement now to have your dog microchipped. We need to make sure the details, if you move, if the dog gets sold on, that those databases pardon me, are kept up to date. Really important. Again, another requirement, your dog should wear a collar with the owner's name and address on. Yeah. Really important that still stays on there. I know that collars can be taken off and chips can be removed, but let's put the basics in place. It might help reduce it, and more importantly, get the dog back. Don't leave dogs unattended for long periods of time, certainly not in the front gardens if you can help it. Make sure your dog's secure where it's going to be let free. Make sure you take photographs of your dog. And that's really important because sometimes when we get dogs back, in fact, on most of the occasions, it's because there's been a very large media campaign, social media, where dogs' photographs have been used. And that's how people recognise, oh, that's the dog missing from, I don't know, Kent. It's ended up in Devon. So having a photograph of your dog is really good. Perhaps not to put it on social media, on open social media platforms so people see what you've got, keep your social media tied down, but obviously keep those photographs just in case the worst happens.
I think, sorry, Martin, to interrupt, I think Maria's put a really good point on that, putting actually spayed on the dog tag for a bitch, because it's not as obvious that they are. So
it is. We've been looking at getting tags and giving them to vets to actually give out to people when they've had their dog spayed. And that's a really great idea. So that's one of the things we've been thinking about, working with the vets out there. And basic ones, don't leave your dog outside shops and inside insecure cars. Real basic stuff. Trying to keep yourself safe. And it's a bit like, mobile phones and other expensive items. You don't leave them lying around. Same for your dog. It's just another commodity. We know that the thefts have always taken place for years and years and years, but don't have the heartbreak. Look after them. Next slide, please. Oh, that was the last slide. There we go. And lastly, what we've done in Devon and Somerset are part now of a larger working group, which we set up nationally looking at dog theft. But we have an internal head. We call him our dog lead. He's my boss, Chief Inspector Rob Curtis, and he's asked us, Sarah, to analyse information we hold on dog theft, which where our problem solving comes from. We know that it's important that it is reported to us, so we can look at the activity, we can look at what's going on. We've created internal guidance for officers. We've created some prevention guidance for the public. There is a page on our Force webpage now externally. You can see advice, similar advice about how to prevent your dog from being stolen. We know it's not just about a confidence, but we know it's about a public confidence issue. We know it's linked to the fear of crime, so it's important we do get it right with everybody. We know it's important that you know that the police are taking this seriously. As I say, we've convened a working group with regional forces now across the country. The group is part of looking at the intelligence, discussing the issues and exploring best practices which we can share. We now have Deputy Chief Constable Amanda Blakeman, who is the UK NPCC lead, that's National Police Chief Council's lead for serious inquisitive crime, attending those meetings, and she's feeds back into the new government dog theft task force as a partner as well. So it really is starting to get connected for the police and the government to understand these issues. And lastly, one thing that Sarah and I, we've acquired about 30 microchip scanners, which will soon be distributed across the force area to help with identification of dogs, not just stolen dogs, but obviously if dogs get caught, if they're worrying animals. Of course, it's a scanner, so we can scan equine as well. We can scan horses if they're loose, etc. So there's some internal stuff we're trying to change as well. And I think that's the end of that. Sarah, is there anything else you want to add about dog theft? Only to say that your chances of being a victim are really small. Take some prevention, look after your dogs, look after each other. But also remember, if you do see things, it may not be somebody who is, the guy in the van, the guy in the white van driving past. He may not be trying to scare you if he sees you with a dog. He may be out for a lawful purpose, like delivering parcels. He may even be a thief looking for something else. But be vigilant, report things to us. Sarah, anything else?
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the only thing was around the fact that we have, as a result of the working group that we've set up, that has led to some national guidance for all forces across the country that's now been developed, so that we're giving kind of consistent messaging around dog theft across the country. And just looking at this year's data since the 1st of April and the crimes that I've harvested from our system, there's probably only 1 or 2 dog thefts related to farms so far this year since April 1st. So if that again helps to just reassure that the numbers or the chances of you as the farming community being a victim are really, really small in a population of 1.7 million. But as Martin has already alluded, the fact that the actual impact of that on anybody being in the farm community or other communities is huge, and we really do get that. We really do understand the impact this has on people. So but that's really all I needed to add.
This may be a message we can get across as well about the importance of, well, obviously it's legal requirement now for all dogs to be chipped, so collies, etc. That's just another avenue that we need to have a chat with when we're on farm. And I think any of your leaflets, I think again we can now all add into our packs that we hand out on farm.
Becky, I haven't touched on one thing, and that's about breeding. It's something which I know trading standards deal with heavily, and also importations. But obviously, it's something which we'll probably explore as we understand the theft problem better.
Yeah, I think definitely that's an area that we probably need to look into, probably for another time that we can. A massive area of importation and lockdown, certainly. So that's something we do need to talk about, and we can do.
Brilliant, thank you. And should we move on to last week? No time is running on.
Yeah, it's really interesting talks though. So
Kerry, we'll let you lead.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm just aware that everybody's been sat still for quite a long time. It is a very hot, balmy evening, so I'll be really, really brief. So I just wanted to round off really with what are our potential issues for this summer, because I know Becky earlier mentioned a few things. I'd just like to say I think we're all aware this week is end of term. The kids are about to embark on their school holidays. Everybody's packing up their caravans and what have you. So I think we're bracing ourselves for a massive influx of people. And certainly in the area where I live, I've never seen it this busy, and it's not even the school holidays. So what issues does that really entail for us? Well, firstly, it's I don't mean to be rude, but the type of visitor we might be getting. Some of the people, they may not be used to using the countryside. They may not know about the rules and regulations and the way in which they should be using our countryside areas, our coastal areas. I might be wrong, some of them do, but potential issues, just going through them. So the sheer volume of visitors on that slide there, this was taken in I think, the winter in Exmoor. You're going to have the high volume, the car parks are packed. The lanes are going to be, trashed up and down with all these cars. Just the sheer volume is going to have an impact on a lot of our environments. Litter, so like the fly tipping aspect, but just also people chucking stuff out of windows, the McDonald's wrappers all over the shop. Wild camping that we've mentioned earlier. people just parking up where they want, doing what they want, go to toilet in hedges and all the rest of it. The beaches, barbecues, and all the associated issues with litter on the beach, getting into the sea and the environment. There's a fire there, I think that was up on one of the moors, people lighting barbecues and wildfires, etc. Loads of issues that, yeah, they might not be directly related to our rural communities, but they're all of our issues, I think, because we have to live in this area, and you know, it's going to have a massive impact upon us. It's our antisocial behaviour week this week within the force, and I think a lot of that comes under the umbrella of antisocial behaviour, and whether people realise it's antisocial, we're going to try and educate some of these and put some messages out. So if I could have the next slide. The coverall for this is the Countryside Code. I've grown up in the countryside and I've been aware of it for many, many years, all my life. But we went to the county show, and speaking to a number of people, it's quite surprising how many people aren't aware of the Countryside Code and what it is and what its key messages are. But I think a lot of the messages within that code cover some of the things we've been talking about this evening. So particularly the respect, protect, enjoy as the three strands. Respect, you know, really appreciating it is the countryside. Leave as you find. Be aware that people live there, they work there. Don't block the gateways, you know, don't block up farm entrances, etc. Protect the environment. Don't leave litter everywhere. Don't leave poo bags hanging in trees. Don't let your dogs rampage everywhere wrecking stuff. But enjoy the countryside and enjoy it responsibly and sensibly. So we've got some resources, and we've got some leaflets. One of the ones is here, and I can pop those into the chat bar, just about the Countryside Code really, and getting those messages out. So if you can share far and wide with your friends, family, etc., and just really getting these key messages out, which we've been trying to do with some of our partner agencies. We speak to the moorland bodies, the fire service, etc., and some of our partner agencies, just really trying to get this message out to our visitors and our local residents to try and make the summer an enjoyable one. So any questions or anything anybody would like to add to that, Martin? Or
I was going to ask Pete, in Somerset, I think they have similar problems over the border. It's people just not knowing how to behave anymore, and it does wind the farmers up, and we know that. And if it's happening, please let us know, especially if it's ongoing.
I think for me as well as all that, we talk about picking up litter, and it's almost like speeding, telling people to stop it, because I still see it all the time. It irritates the life out of me. Glass bottles for me, really important. Up on the top of the hills, you're going to cause a fire, but if it's just on the bottom, even if on the Somerset levels where it's wet and we're not going to have some wildfire, if you chuck bottles down, when you come to the top of the grass and you shatter that glass, you'll fire it in all the animal feed. Or if then kids do run across the field, even if the farmer doesn't mind, they're going to be respectful and fall down, they're going to get glass fall in the leg. So for me, glass bottles, if you see anybody or any sort of talk or advice you can give about glass bottles, about where you keep them and keep them safe, take them home, is really quite key. We're getting a bit fed up with it here with glass just shattered everywhere. It's not the farmer's fault. You can't see them.
And that's just something so simple, isn't it? Like taking your litter home or something. And yeah, so the new Countryside Code, I think out of this tonight, we've certainly got a lot more leaflets and everything that we can promote when we go out on farm and everything. So no, certainly.
And Becky, just lastly, you know, we've discussed about some quite serious subjects. The West Country still has some of the safest communities and areas to live in the whole of the UK. So please sleep well. Yeah. We just need to work together.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you very much to our friendly rural police officers, and they certainly help us out with a lot of jobs that we have in and a lot of complaints, and are always great go-to people. So I think we just had an additional add-on that I think Nikki was going to introduce.
Yeah, thanks, Becky. I'll keep it really brief. She's given me a few slides, but I'll literally, if we could just put up the first slide, Sam. It's a clinic that she wanted us to be made aware of about some psychological therapies, mainly around mindfulness, introducing some cognitive therapy and a new treatment for depression and related conditions. So really it's just the awareness that these clinics are there, and they're in our community locally. And she just really wanted to talk this evening, but unfortunately hasn't been able to join us. But I think what we will do is try and get them back to one of our next webinars to sort of give you a bit more information about it, because we have obviously been here along for a lot of the evening now. So and if we just whip to the last slide, it just says sort of where you can get a little bit more information about these clinics, where they're available, what they can do, and yeah, so she said just please email if you know of anybody or yourselves that may be interested in these clinics. So yeah, that's really quick, but I am conscious that it's been a long meeting, a very, very good meeting, so I don't want to stop it in good flows, but thank you very much.
So just to say thank you to all our speakers and our attendees, and we hope to see you next time. Thank you.